Welcome to Storytime with Cozy Malka, where we gather to share tales about responsibility, courage, and honesty. As we come together, let's put on our listening ears as we're transported into amazing stories. For this episode, we'll be learning about bravery versus injustice as we continue our tale about the clever rogue, Robin Hood and his merry men. So without further ado, let's find a cozy spot, grab a friend, and let's enjoy a great story. All right, today's chapter is chapter 13, How They Got Will Scarlet Back. Within the castle yard was bustle and excitement, for in addition to the ordinary tasks of the morning, there was the business of putting up a tall gallows for the hanging of Will Scarlet, and Isambard himself, together with his friend Roger the Cruel, strode about, the two of them in full armor, bestowing an order here and a kick on some unfortunate worker there. Isambard was in high good humor, for nobody but himself had ever been able to lay hands on any man of Robin's band, and he promised himself that he would not rest content with one, but would get together a party of men who knew the ways of Sherwood and would smoke out the whole band of them. Also, he promised himself an hour or so of amusing and torturing Will Scarlet, once the gallows were up and ready, to see if they could wring out of him the secret of Robinson's retreat, which nobody seemed able to find before they hanged him. The bustle and excitement were at their highest when a tattered old man drove up to the drawbridge, passed the man on sentry duty without being questioned, since both the horse and cart were well known, and passed through the low arch in the great wall that shut in the castle yard and formed the outer defence of the great keep, in which were Isambard's living rooms with the dungeons under them. And the entry to the arch, the old man reached back to one of his bundles, jerked the string off the mouth of the sack, and with a push let loose its contents, which went rolling back towards the guardhouse, away from the darkness of the arch. Taking no notice, the old man drove on, straight towards the keep. He was within 10 yards of its open portal when Isambard spied him. "Hey, old fool!" Isambard yelled. "Think you that we store old wood in our banqueting hall? Fetch your cart here!" Staring at him stupidly, the old man fumbled with the string of his second sack. Isambard took a couple of steps towards the cart, but stopped as a tremendous yelling and screaming came from the direction of the guardhouse. Then the old man got the string off his sack, gave it a push, and out toppled Robin's second beehive at Isambard's feet. Just as Robin pulled down the gauze over his face and neck from under his hat and made a flying leap that landed him almost in the doorway of the keep. A great cloud of angry bees rode up all over the castle yard just as the door of the keep slammed in Isambard's face, and he heard the sound of the great bolts being shot home. Then the horse, stung by half a dozen bees at once, shot forward and scattered a group of Isambard's men who were running towards their master. Well, first Isambard himself and then Roger the Cruel yelled and danced as the bees got under their armor and began to sting. They slapped at the hard metal they wore and only made matters worse, while Isambard's men ran in all directions. Roger the Cruel, rolling on the ground and squealing as the stings got at him under his armor, spied a dark storehouse built in the outer walls and made for its shelter, yelling and slapping himself all over, just as the great arrow hummed over the wall and thudded into the earth at Isambard's feet. Isambard, dancing and slapping with his gauntleted hands, stared at it. Attacked by Robin Hood's band," he shouted. "To me, men, and lower away at the portcullis! Up with the drawbridge!" But the bees were keeping his men busy, and they crowded round the dark doorway in which Roger the Cruel was trying to shelter himself, with a little cloud of bees buzzing spitefully round the head of every one of them. Isambard's shout went unheard, for they were all shouting at once, and Isambard himself stopping every now and again to dance and slap himself, made for the chamber of the wall in which was the portcullis gear, to lower it and keep the outlaws out, for now the arrows began to fall thick and fast, and already 3 of his men were wounded by them before they could get to the shelter of the wall. Inside the keep kept Robin, profiting from his talk with Dickon of Hartshead, darted into a little room to the right of the doorway, where the only man on guard lounged carelessly. In 10 seconds the man was lying stunned by a blow from the heavy cudgel Robin carried in addition to his sword, and Robin had the bunch of keys which he saw lying on the table as the uproar began among the bees outside. Robin swung shut the heavy door which led to the great hall of the keep and the upper apartments, locking it with one of the keys he had taken, and then with another key he unlocked a door at the head of the stairway that led down into the passageway between the dungeons. He locked his door behind him, knowing that he would not return that way. "Scarlet," he shouted, "where are you, good Will?" "Here I be," came a weak voice from the end of the corridor. Robin went along warily, passing a great chamber, through the doorway of which shone a red glow from the fire, in which the executioner had been heating his implements of torture, and other doors from which unfortunate victims of Isambard's cruelty called out or moaned as he passed. He called again to make sure the cell in which Scarlet had been placed, found the right key, and flung the door open. Will Scarlet staggered out, a blood-stained bandage around his head. "I knew you would not fail me, Robin," he said weakly, "but I doubt if I have strength to win back to the greenwood. They have wounded me sorely." "Courage, good Will," said Robin, "and a breath of fresh air outside his unwholesome place will work wonders. But I think we have time to unlock a few of these doors as we go. We may win some aid from those within, if we could only arm them." Door after door he unlocked as they went along the corridor to the foot of the stairway, and out crawled a dozen pallid wretches, who would have kissed his feet in thankfulness had he let them, while there were 4 stout fellows who had not been long confined, and 1 tall man who bowed courteously to Robin and thanked him for his deliverance. "Who is the hero that hath released me?" he asked. "Time for that later," said Robin shortly. "Get you a hammer or a pair of great pincers, or anything with which to strike a blow from their torture chamber, for we may have fighting yet before we win free." He had now 5 good men, in addition to those who were so weak from long imprisonment that they were useless, and he set 2 of them to help Will Scarlet along. Following the instructions Dickon had given him, he found a low-set door in the wall at the foot of the stairs, and unlocking it, disclosed the black darkness of a slimy passage. Just then they heard faintly the sound of great thunderous blows above their heads, and Robin smiled grimly at the noise. "That is Isambard, past doubt," he said. "He's trying to batter on his own front door by the sound of it." And so it was, for since Robin had locked the door of the great inner hall, nobody could get at the bolts of the outer door from the inside to open it, and Isambard's only chance was to batter it down, though he knew it would take a good month of carpenters' and smiths' works to make him another like it, so to say nothing of the damage to the masonry. Between the locking of the great door on its owner and a panic wrought by the beeves, Robin's men might have advanced or taken the castle that day, if they had only known it. As it was, they hailed in their arrows and wondered why Isambard did not sally out to attack them, not knowing how busy he was inside his own castle yard. "We must go this way," said Robin, gazing into the darkness of the passage. "One of you fetch me the torch from far end of the corridor, and I will lead the way." When the torch was brought, he advanced into the passage, with it in one hand and a sword in the other, since there was no room to swing his cudgel in case of attack. But they met no attack, for this passage was a secret way of Isambard for carrying out the bodies of his victims. For nearly a quarter of a mile they judged. They tramped through the dripping, slimy way until before them daylight showed through the keyhole of an iron door. "Now let us pray that I have the key of this door," Robin said, and sought out among those he had brought. Among them was one that fitted, and he led the way out into a deep arch, beyond which showed the brilliant sunshine of the day glimmering on water. They found themselves standing at the top of a steep slope, with the castle wall behind them, and before them the depths of the moat. Beyond, in the distance, waiting for them, lay a body of Robinson's men, among whom Little John stood up and waved to them to announce that they had been seen, after which he sank down again in the grass. "We must swim for it," Robin said. "Come on, Will, and let me give you a hand across." The tall man who had questioned him stepped forward. "Good sir," he said, "do you let me take one side of him, and between us we will bear him up through the water." "Willingly," said Robin, "but who may you be that talk like a Norman knight, and yet you lie in a prison at a Norman knight's hands?" "I am a knight, Sir Richard at Leah," said the other. "Mercy on us!" Robin exclaimed, startled. "But let us get across this water before we talk about it." He led the way down the bank, helping Scarlet as he went, and Sir Richard gave the wounded man a lift on the other side. They got across and climbed out, followed by the 4 men who had had strength to arm themselves, and by 2 other prisoners. The rest, hopeless and hardly sane after years of Isambard's cruelties, dared not trust themselves to swim the deep moat, and stood by the archway in the wall, staring stupidly. "Poor wretches," Robin said, looking back at them. "I would that we could have saved them, but if they cannot help themselves, they must wait till we come this way again. Let us march quickly before we are spied from the castle." But Sir Isambard and his men were too busy trying to get back into their own castle, and trying to escape the attentions of such of the beeves as still buzzed around them, to keep good watch, and Robin with his party were well out of crossbow shot, when a great cry from the castle wall told them that they had been seen. A little later, a troop of a dozen horsemen clattered out over the drawbridge, rounded the moat, and galloped across the open to cut off the fleeing men. Then, from under the rags that disguised him, Robin took the silver bugle he had won in the tournament at Nottingham and blew 5 blasts on it. And from the edge of the wood, to which Robin and his party advanced, There hummed and sang flight after flight of great arrows towards the pursuing horsemen, so that within a minute half their horses were down, and the rest were bolting back towards the shelter of the castle. Robin blew one short blast, and the arrows shower ceased. Man, said Sir Richard at Leah, are you a magician? Thank you for joining us for Story Time with Cozy Malka. We'd love for you to share with our friends what you've learned from tonight's tale. Join us next time for the continuing adventures of Robin Hood.